Welcome back to the SME Soup podcast. I'm Thomas Baxendale, and today we've got something very special. I'm joined by Dishang Patel, Executive Vice President and Head of Digital Assets here at RAKBANK. Also joining me is Nadeem Ladki, Global Head of Bitpanda Technology Solutions. Today we're going to be talking about a true market first, the combination of RAKBANK and Bitpanda Technologies to provide our retail customers the ability to buy and sell cryptocurrency. Let's dive in. Dishang, Nadeem, welcome. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Thank you for having us.
So we're here to talk about something really exciting. RAKBANK and Bitpanda combining forces to allow RAKBANK customers to buy and trade crypto in their native app. Let's start at the beginning. How did all this start?
I'm going to defer to Nadeem on this one.
Wow, I mean, we can go as early as 2009 when the first Bitcoin transaction. No, but jokes aside, UAE, as I'm sure most of you have seen, if not should be seeing, is a very strong culture when it comes to a framework that allows for crypto. And thanks to the strong progressive nature of that regulatory setup, we wanted to enter as Bitpanda, right? This was about a year ago, and we looked to the market for two key things. One, get set up, and then two, who is the best partner? And in looking and exploring all the various banking partners in this region, in this country, we naturally were leaning towards RAKBANK, and for multiple reasons, which I'm sure Dishang can also explain. But we wanted a bank that could have mass reach, had a strong presence, and really stuck for the values that Bitpanda stood for.
Yeah,
strong compliance, strong reputation, strong loyalty. And 1 year ago, we had an opportunity to meet with the RAKBANK team. And fast forward till today, we're super excited about the launch of the system. And maybe you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I think as RAKBANK, as a national bank, as a conventional bank, it's not conventional to do what we did, and therefore partnerships are key to do these sort of initiatives or execute these initiatives, and to get a partner with a reputation that precedes them. First of all, being the biggest VASP in Europe, number one. Secondly, making sure that that can enhance our reputation and not just sort of attribute to it. That was important. So, obviously the partnership was signed last year, and then when it came to execution, you have to see eye to eye. And to Nadeem's point, with reference to getting where we are today, I mean, we've done things in record time.
yes,
We're the first conventional bank to do what we did. Of course, there are other digital neobanks who've done this as well prior to us, but just the reception that the market has given us, because we're the first conventional bank, and the setup, and I'm sure we'll go into that a bit more detail. What's important to understand is all the factors that Nadeem referred to, and in terms of the key markers they look for. We also look for those as a bank. But one thing we're trying to do more than anything, which is create an asset class that the masses can access, which wasn't accessible to them. These big scary exchanges can be just that scary.
Yeah.
And when you have this much data, when you have this much information to use and access and trade against, people get a little bit overawed. So simplicity is the foundation to what we wanted to build, and Bitpanda allows us to do that.
So just touching on something you said there, conventional and traditional banks. So I've been in this market for nearly 11 years now. This is not something that any other bank has been looking at. Why is RAKBANK taking this decision to launch this kind of feature?
Well, we're a digital bank with a human touch, right? And truth be told, I think sometimes you have to pioneer, and you have to be first. It's not always beneficial to be first, but in this instance, I think it is. Crypto traditionally is a speed play, and everyone does things at pace.
Mm-hmm.
This is no different. Like I said, we referenced the reception we got from the market because of our partnership, because of the announcement. And it's been nothing short of phenomenal, frankly, because not only have we enabled simplicity in this particular asset class, we've also enabled the use of dirhams to trade. And crypto is a denominated currency in US dollars traditionally. So, there's multiple factors which we can dive into a bit more. But this is why I think we thought there's a play here where we can help our customers and put them first, like we always do as a bank.
I mean, like, to add to that as well, right, and just complement what Dishang said, you have to look at market penetration, right? I think the UAE market is very high up there when it comes to market penetration. I think last we checked, it was north of 25% already, which is a pretty high number in comparison. To give you an idea, the global average only sits at around 11, 12-ish%. So UAE population, UAE residents, already want to and have quite a lot of exposure to the crypto. So I think a bank wanting to get into the space is smart from two reasons. One, offer customers a safer and a more simplified approach to how to get their access to these asset classes, but also diversity of asset classes, right? I mean, everyone is used to buying stocks and others and local stocks and international stocks. You need to, if you really want to be that forward-thinking bank, you need to give diversity of investments, right? And that could be from bonds to equities and now to crypto, right? Which is a new asset class that's beginning to come up more and more.
That was really interesting. How has it been working with the central bank? Obviously, we're a regulated entity, and now this is a new space that we want to go into. Can you just talk a bit about how we've worked with the central bank to get this through?
For sure. Let me just address one additional point to what Nadeem said in the last point. The reason I want to address it is because I think it's important. You asked the question, why have we done it? It's because of the progressive nature, and you know, kudos where it's deserved. We wouldn't be able to do this if our respective management teams weren't bought into the idea.
Of course.
Right. And that progressive nature allows us to do what we do. And that leads me nicely onto the central bank. If you look at what the central bank have done here in this country, I mean, I would be as bold as to say the Stablecoin Act, or the Genius Act as it's known in the US, is somewhat of a repeat of what the central bank have done here with reference to payment token services.
Sure.
But I know the topic isn't that, but the point I'm getting at is we are creating a future sort of forward planned blueprint. And truth be told, VARA, for example, is the first of its kind dedicated virtual asset regulator in the world, as I understand it. You know, and when you have that progressive mindset, of course, the central bank has to sign these things off. You know, you don't get these regulators popping up or being created without their consent and their blessing. And to do that, the central bank has to be very progressive themselves. And that's exactly what they've been. They've been very progressive, but more than that, they've also been very pragmatic, and they've rolled with change.
Yeah.
Because we're all learning. Let's be very honest. This is a market which you have to, I talked about pace earlier. Everything happens at pace, including regulatory enrichment and enhancements. And I think the central bank we have to tip our hat to them, because truth is that they've really enabled this ecosystem. Without regulation, no one really, especially from a conventional retail-based perspective, really believes or feels, especially with the unfortunate news in the market over the last few years, feels that this is a safe asset class to trade in.
Yeah, I think the one thing to really pull out of that from my side is the approachability, right, of regulators in this country. I think ultimately what's a regulator's real responsibility is protection of users, right? Protection of the citizens in the country from a fiscal, federal, economic perspective. And I think that's what I've always enjoyed working and being in this country, is that they want to do things right, but they're also humble enough to say, let's learn, let's bring people in, let's talk, right? That, and also the bifurcation of responsibilities. I think, you know, Dishang had alluded to VARA, right? Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority. That is a dedicated group that has been set up to focus and obviously ensure that the appropriate companies get the licensing and do things in the right way. The central bank is more focused on the federal level, right? The sovereignty, the real fiat money, right?
Sure.
And that bifurcation and working together is really what allows a harmonious, I think, relationship, right? Where the bank focuses on its responsibilities, Bitpanda focuses on their responsibilities.
Yeah.
But I think the connectedness is important here, right? To just leverage off what Nadeem is saying. If you think about, we talk about central bank, but they're not alone in this. VARA, and they're not alone in this. They obviously work together to some extent, but at federal level versus local emirate level in Dubai. But then you've got ESCA, who partner with VARA. Then you've got ADGM, who are enriching the setup. DIFC are catching up with this. You know, these are all the main regulators in the country, and they're all working in a fashion which is pushing in the same direction. You know, I as people who know me know that I love to give analogies, and my analogy with this is everyone's on the same highway now. They're not all necessarily driving the same cars at the same speed, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
And that's what's helping us really drive the ecosystem forward.
That's really required, right? So it's this connected ecosystems of teams and people to get it all done. So let's shift gears a little bit. Talk us through what's actually gone live. What is the journey for a RAKBANK customer signing into the app for the first time? What do they see, and how do I use the service?
Okay. I'm super proud of this. The reason I'm super proud of it is because, you know, I always say to the team, the wider extended teams that we work with and have supported us, it's way more difficult to simplify than it is to complicate. And we've taken that mantle and we've taken that mantle and we've really driven it forward, right? So the simplicity in the nature of what we have done and created with the help of Bitpanda, of course, very much hand in hand is, and this is a quote from people who've done this, is you can onboard to start trading within 3 minutes actually. So that just tells you the simplicity and the nature of what we've created, which is essentially, if you are on our app, our existing RAKBANK app, you don't have to download a new app. You start the onboarding journey from a banner that is shown to you or a tile that is shown to you within the app. You then accept some terms and conditions, which is standard practice. You upload some information, and then we transport you to Bitpanda side of the journey, where they similarly, from a regulatory standpoint, because VARA are their regulator, central bank are our regulator, so we're covering both sets of requirements through this journey. Once that process is complete, assuming there's no additional enhanced due diligence to do, the customer is ready to trade, and they can place their first trade within minutes. That trade can basically translate to a confirmation coming on SMS, a on-screen confirmation from Bitpanda, but it's important to know where the responsibilities lie here. Our responsibilities at RAKBANK is to give our customers the ability to access the Bitpanda platform. Bitpanda are the regulated entity by VARA who can offer the execution trading. So when our customer gets transported, it's very clearly demarked that they are being redirected to Bitpanda. Now, the journey is seamless in the sense that you don't really see that transition, but it's very clear because we are very focused and making sure that the customer understands the regulatory sort of coverage that exists. The only other thing I'll add is we haven't just added the ability to buy, we've added the ability to sell and swap, which is, and at the some of the lowest prices in the market, certainly on the buy side, we are the lowest in the market at 0%. So, whilst we run this initial campaign, that will remain, and who knows, it may be extended depending on the success of the campaign. I don't know if there's anything you want to...
No, I mean, very well summarized. I think from our perspective, yeah, I think what you said is spot on. I'm super proud of this, right? This is a first of its kind in the UAE. Fortunately, not a first of its kind for Bitpanda globally, right? We've done this for a few years now, and that's also one of the reasons that lend itself to why RAKBANK did choose us, right? We've come with multi-years of experience working with top-tier banks all around Europe to bring this exact experience. Yeah. And to me, it's that, right? We focused on, and very much from the direction of RAKBANK's management team, we want the experience, right? Digital bank with a human touch, right? I think that's very much exactly what it is. And we wanted to give that seamless experience. Now, the complexity behind everything is what all the different elements that Dishang alluded to, right? A handoff of responsibility, who is providing the appropriate measures, all the appropriate disclaimers and risk measurements that you do have to obviously notify to users to just make sure they know what they're getting into. But that level of comfort is built into a banking app. And that is really, I always say, level one. You need that, right? Because, many people have seen other exchanges, right? Like other VASPs, so we call them virtual asset service providers apps, right? There's tons of them already in the market. There's even more all around the world. A lot of those don't feel safe, right? Not level of information you have to provide. Like, how do I get my money in and out? Is my money even safe there? So I think those elements are what we're trying to really break down and bring this kind of a service to the UAE, right?
Yeah, no, I want to double click on one of these things that Nadeem just mentioned, and that's about the sort of accessibility, but also the seamlessness of what we are doing. I alluded earlier to, or not alluded, specifically stated that we are offering trading in AED. Now, the convenience of connecting your account directly versus what an exchange does, which what Nadeem was referring to is what in the market is called on and off ramping, where you convert your fiat or traditional currency into crypto. And then that's the on-ramping piece. And then the off-ramping piece is the opposite, where you convert it back to traditional currencies or fiat. And this is completely seamless because you're pre-connected to your RAKBANK account, your existing AED CASA account, savings or current account. So it means that you don't actually have to worry about where your money's going. You know exactly where it is. It's all staying in the ecosystem. And, yes, the trading is happening on Bitpanda side, but Bitpanda banks with RAKBANK. So the monetary ecosystem from a client perspective is very much encased within RAKBANK, and therefore, leveraging our history and our trust and the values that we bring to our customer base, essentially.
And it's something I wanted to touch on. So from my perspective as of head of digital, the experience is really clean. So there's an alternate universe here where we could have spun up another app. You mentioned it before. And that experience is substandard to what we've actually gone live with. I'm quite biased because obviously I work for RAKBANK, but I used it, I entered my Emirates ID and it was all connected in the background and I was trading within minutes. Talk to us a bit about how that decision was made. Was that the first, design that we came up with, or were there alternatives that we discounted as we went through that process?
I mean, look, a large element of that is regulatory based. We have to consider the regulatory requirements we have to meet, both as Bitpanda as well as, Bitpanda as well as RAKBANK. We're one team, one dream. Yeah. But the truth is that, like I said, simplicity is way more difficult to create than complexity. And to create that simplicity, which is all the stuff, you see the car, but the engine is the complex part, right? When you open the hood, you see, wow, there's this sort of crazy machinery here.
Nobody understands.
And nobody understands except for mechanics. You really have to get literally under the hood. And that's what we wanted to do. And that's what we end up doing. Now, when we started this journey, or certainly when I started this journey in January, I mean, from January to when we went officially live, first customer onboarded was on the 1st of July. And then we expanded and we rolled out to various different customers. I mean, that's not a long time. 6 months, less than 6 months it was. Now, did that mean that we knew the answer when we started? Of course not. We had to roll with the punches to some extent. Bitpanda discovered things about us. We discovered things about Bitpanda. And let's be honest, although Bitpanda have worked with some major players in the market before, it's their first foray into the UAE. Sure. And therefore the UAE is quite a unique market. So there was a level of education that we had to provide them, and there was a level of education they had to provide to us because of the best practices with reference to sort of these platforms. So I think because we spent enough time doing that, that yielded a lot of benefits.
Sure.
So it was putting the legwork in up front to yield the benefit downstream. Now, if you ask me, I mean, perfectionism is something that people talk about too much, but I'm not looking for perfection. Perfection genuinely doesn't exist. What we need to do is create improvements, and we will do that. We'll improve the customer journey because it can be improved. We'll improve the speed. We'll improve the connectedness. We'll improve the visibility. We'll improve the information sharing. We'll improve a lot of things, of course, in conjunction with what Bitpanda has and can offer. And of course, let's not forget the features. We have partnered with Bitpanda because they are an exchange. Let's be very clear. They have a massive suite of features. We've only gone live with 3 basic ones right now. I consider basic, but we will be adding some very soon because we want to make sure we are progressing, not just being stagnant. I don't know if there's anything I missed.
No, I think it's a testament to what a partnership really is about, right? I mean, it's about honesty, humility about what we know and what we don't know, and working together. And I think fast forward to, I think what we first thought about in this very beginning of this podcast, many firsts, right? I mean, within 6 months, launching from ideation to execution to launch, crazy. Like it's how fast that happened.
I know that.
And so I think, and that is a lot about being very direct with each other, right? Knowing what works, what doesn't work. And I think I'm happy kind of reflecting back on over the last year or so. It's been a fantastic and will be a continued very strong partnership because to some of the ideas that Dishang said, many features to come. We are a broker, not an exchange, but we are a broker, and we have many different systems.
Technically, you are an exchange in Europe.
And so we have many ideas and many features, and we want to be more firsts in the UAE, right? And obviously not to steal the thunder, I think more things to come, and we're very excited to kind of bring all that out.
Okay, so Nadeem, a lot of this is very fresh to customers. The crypto world is still a very scary place. How are we ensuring that this is safe, secure, and compliant?
Yeah, I mean, big question, but let's try to break down the various elements, right? Access to crypto has always been around, right? I mean, it's been around for 10 plus years already, but the various platforms are so different with what they can offer. I think one element that Dishang talked about was just something as basic as on and off ramping, which is getting your money in, getting your money out.
Sure.
Countries that don't operate legally in this country, like under a regulatory framework, don't have access to AED, right? So something even as hard as just getting money as a bank transfer into your account and out is so hard to do, right? Yeah. So that already gives a lot of people one element of not trusting an application, right? If I can't get my money in and out, what am I going to do? So they have to look for alternate payment methods, right? Now bring in high costs, right? Credit card, debit card usages, overfunding, over leveraging, right? These are all these elements that are not taken into consideration when trying to use an app that gives you that peace of mind and that safety, right? So I think that's like one main element.
Yeah.
Two, just security of those funds, right? Being a regulated partner like Bitpanda are to RAKBANK, we have to abide by laws when it comes to proof of reserves, where the accounts are held, segregation of those assets, right? This applies just to any other bank like it does to crypto companies, right? And not everyone has that. So I think elements when it comes to getting your money in and out, on and off ramping, and other elements such as security and custody of those assets are very, very vital, right? And I think that gives a rooted nature of trust when it comes to using a partnership like what RAKBANK and Bitpanda have done versus other applications. But I don't know, Dishang, if you also have other elements, you're obviously someone who's been in this space for some time.
Yeah, look, I think if you consider traditional banking versus a crypto business, of course, the reputations proceed very differently because of let's say, recent in the last 5 odd years, as the lenses got wider and bigger on the crypto world. And I don't like to call it crypto because everyone, unfortunately, clubs it together under this one term. It's more digital assets because digital assets is crypto's one silo of digital assets. Then you've got tokenization, RWA, stable coins, etc., etc. There's so many different factors and elements to it. But additional to all the security aspects, I think there's one big elephant in the room, and that's cost. And Nadeem touched on it very briefly. And cost manifests in multiple ways. One is on the on-off ramping and the perceived lack of potential security that brings, but also that brings additional cost when you're forced to convert your dirhams to US dollar before you trade, when you're forced to convert it to their local token before you trade. That's an FX cost, anywhere, arbitrarily 3 to 5% that you have to pay even before you start trading. And then on top of that, there's of course liquidity concerns depending on the size of the organization you're working with. The smaller the organization, the wider the spreads in general. And of course, when you go down that list of coins, then the liquidity dissipates even further, which is another one of the reasons we're working with Bitpanda, because they're one of the biggest VASPs in Europe, if not in fact the biggest VASP in Europe, as I understand it from a market cap perspective. And the liquidity aspect and the tightness of the spreads that we can offer our customers as a result is a big factor, which reduces cost. I talked about the 0 fees on the buys. That's a promotional campaign that we're running, as I mentioned, but that's not the only factor. The factor of cost of not having to convert your dirhams, as I touched on earlier, not having to pay wide spreads, which is essentially the difference between the buy and the sell price and how much you pay on average for each transaction, which means that you're not on the back foot the moment you start trading, the moment you're on board as a customer, which is, that also builds trust. Let's be very honest. If I'm being transparent and I'm telling the customer that this is what you're getting, it means that the customer feels hopefully more safe. And that's what a bank brings. And let's address one more point, right? Banks in this part of the world are more trusted than in other parts of the world. I mean, look, I'm from London, and in London or in the UK in general, banks, certainly since the financial crisis, have not been top of the list of people's trust levels, let's say. Whereas here, there's an inherent trust element to consumers and even institutions. So I think it's important that we understand that and we allow customers to not just understand why we're doing this, but also understand how they're not going to be detrimentally affected.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, so the RAKBANK brand is a very well-trusted brand, and we're passing through the customer to the Bitpanda platform, and the customers doing their transactions. Just how do customers know that their crypto is safe there? Can you just double click on that for us, Nadeem?
Yeah, I mean, look, multiple reasons. One, just purely going back to our historic experience, our historic legacy, right? We've been around for 10 plus years. Now, many people know Bitpanda's brand is not just a 2-3 year business, right? We've been regulated by multiple regulators across Europe, some as sturdy as BaFin, the German regulator, which is very well known to be one of the most strictest regulators. And we've very fortunately never once had an issue, never fined, never lost any client assets. So I think just taking all that first, proven track record, right? That's one. Two, the UAE and VARA, in specific, our regulators' laws are very clear on how client assets and segregation of those assets need to happen. We don't hold a license. We can't keep our license if we don't adhere to those, right? So having that license operational is also a very good element and a sign for users such as yourselves and any of us that are buying and selling those assets to know that your assets are safe. Third, but not least as well, is like kind of going back to something that Dishang also alluded to, speed, right, of getting to the market. We were the fastest VASP to actually get our fully operational license here in the UAE. That's, again, testament to our systems, our securities, and everything that we demonstrated to our regulator, VARA, about being a well set up and a good shop, right? So I think that's kind of three things that I would say why a lot of people will have that comfort level of knowing, okay, my assets are safe. I know that they're being segregated. They're not being used for purposes that they shouldn't be used for, or commingling, as is always said. And that my assets are 100% safe and secure for when I want to buy in a day, a week, a year. Doesn't matter, right? Those assets are always there.
Amazing. So it's safe, it's secure, it's easy to use. Talk to us about the launch. This is now available to all customers. And honestly, when we saw the post that went out on LinkedIn and in Khaleej Times, all this kind of stuff, I've never seen a response like that. I think the post that I reposted with my comments was the most viewed that I've ever done on LinkedIn. So how was it going live?
First of all, you're welcome.
Thank you.
No, joking aside, yes, we are actually, as of 1st of September, which is yesterday, our marketing campaign has gone live. It will roll out in phases over the next few days, but people will see bridge banners, people will see digital banners, people will see advertisings within branches, outside of DIFC, in ADGM. So yeah, we're officially open to customers joining us and doing this. New to bank customers, existing bank customers have had early access for obvious reasons, I can't say that we've not enjoyed some success. I mean, it's done. The platform is held up really well, first and foremost. Secondly, we've had a great reception. People have traded. People are continuously trading. We have a close to 50% active trading pool. We've onboarded more than 1,000 customers onto the platform. So, and that's in the space of maybe 2-3 weeks since we went to customers. So yeah, the speed has been great. Of course, as a business, as a bank, as a service provider, we all have to make sure we stay on our toes and we continue to drive growth in the ways we can. But yeah, please go and check it out. You'll definitely be able to access it. Just go to our website. All the information is there.
Amazing. And Nadeem, how has it been for Bitpanda?
I mean, again, this is our first foray into the UAE, and we couldn't have had a better reception to it from everything, right? From a right trusted partner to the right visibility, but also, ultimately we're here to service the end customer, right? So this is something that Bitpanda has been doing for several years. We have over 7 million customers just on our own retail application out of Europe, obviously not something that we do in the UAE. But with that, we drive many of these B2B2C partnerships, just exactly like Dishang said. In the UAE, it's been great, but just to kind of give more depth to people's view, Bitpanda have been doing this in Europe, and we probably crossed more than 25 million customers that we've helped provide access to around the world. So, stability of systems are things that we know inherently, making sure that customer is getting a good experience from day one, and frictionless experience to buy, to sell, no downtime. But in the UAE, I mean, I couldn't be more proud to just drive by and see all these fantastic banners where Bitpanda and RAKBANK have joined forces to be able to showcase all that, right?
Yeah.
So, nice moment for us to kind of say we are no longer a European brand, but we truly are a global brand finally.
What's interesting in what Nadeem just said is we've got a lot of headroom to grow, right? We've just started the journey, and, testament to Bitpanda and their success in Europe, but it just shows you what can be achieved. And, given the willingness for customers to onboard, not just onto our platform, but in general, you mentioned 25% of the overall UAE population, may I add, not just of the working population. It's a big number. So, there's a lot of trust we want to build in the market through all the things we said, but we want to attract people to try it. It's as I say, it's seamless, and there's obviously great incentives to do it right now, and hopefully will continue. But the success breeds success, and that's what we're trying to. We're following the footsteps of what Bitpanda have done in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly a desire for it, and we've launched with 8 cryptocurrencies on the platform itself. Any additions coming soon?
Watch this space, yeah. We have a exclusive launch event coming on the 16th of September, which is currently by invitation only, and we'll be making an announcement that regarding this. I'm not going to give too much away, but we will be talking about that for sure.
Amazing. We'll be checking our calendars.
I mean, one thing, not to take too much away from it, but if you look at what us generally as a company can do, and I think that can kind of give you like nice hints as to the ideas that we may explore in future. We are obviously a licensed broker. We have access to more than 600 different tokens. A high portion of which are now available in the UAE to be able to be listed. So one idea. But then two, more importantly, we also do things outside of just buying and selling of cryptocurrency. Product features such as swapping, right? Being able to go from one cryptocurrency to another. You'd be surprised at that basic element. I mean, again, Dishang and I refer to as basic. Doesn't exist, right? A lot of people today are buying into dirhams, having to sell, switch back to dirhams. It goes back to, again, that whole friction of cost, right? High cost to just switch. Other things like staking, other things like tokenization platforms, right? Being able to launch RWAs or real world assets, stable coins and issuance. These are all things that we do and have the technology and provide it. So many areas that we are exploring together as a partnership here in the UAE. And I guess time will show some of the cool things that we're coming out with.
Do you know one thing that we haven't talked about, and quite rightly so, but the market talks, right? And when the market talks, they talk about where can this go, not just for RAKBANK, but as an industry.
Sure.
And when I say there's a lot of headroom to go, I don't just mean in the retail space. I mean, think about the institutional desire here. We haven't even touched on that. So, let's just say that if you look, some large banks, Standard Chartered, for example, a few weeks ago announced that they've just launched a brokerage platform for institutions. Now, that is a global offering, as I understand it. However, there's opportunities in the institutional space. Clearly, otherwise, banks of that nature wouldn't be offering these things. In the same way as we saw an opportunity in the retail space to launch crypto. There's many things, some of the things on Nadeem's list that he mentioned that they've done in the past, as well as other things that people wouldn't necessarily think, unfortunately, the mind always goes to why. And why would people want to do that? There's no way people are going to want to do this. And then you do it, and then the market realizes, actually, we did want to do this.
Of course, yeah.
So sometimes, Dubai has been, and the UAE has been very good at this, and that is build it and they will come, and they've come, and they're continuing to come. So we'll take that mantle and run with that.
No, I like that. And this ultimately is a business podcast. So any ideas for small businesses to be able to use any of these features, functionalities in the future?
Yeah, I can take a first stab. I mean, obviously the emergence of what we call digital asset treasury companies, right? Where people, let's say more traditional companies, whether it's SMEs or businesses, are beginning to get exposure on their balance sheet to cryptocurrency. Why? Just like any diversified treasury, right? You don't hold all your assets in one thing, you can buy and sell in others. So I think that's just the most obvious one. But let's go to the unobvious, right? Things that are not as easy. People always think when I say crypto tokens, you just think Bitcoin. But there's many other areas that are being explored. Tokenization of assets, such as traditional securities like money markets or property, as we've seen here in the UAE, are also things that are being explored, right? So yes, maybe an SME wants to get into the space, and companies and banks like RAKBANK and hopefully in partnership with Bitpanda will be able to offer those kind of other services, right? Not the just buy Bitcoin and do nothing with it. It's more, what other areas can I get access to? Whether it's these new kind of asset classes that are being launched, the tokenization of those assets, or others in future. I mean, I'm not an all-knowing person. I have absolutely no idea what's to come. But what I do know is this technology is by far spearheading a very interesting transformation in the financial sector, whether it comes to DeFi, lending, etc. And these are all areas that a bank will want to get into and offer its companies, because it goes again back to diversity. If I can be the bank that offers you everything, why wouldn't I want to do it, right? And so I think that's a pretty exciting area that I'm looking forward to kind of seeing where businesses get into.
This goes back to the point that we discussed earlier around the progressive nature of regulators here, and certainly the central bank. None of this happens without their oversight and their governance, and just the fact that we're talking about these things tells you that it's there, and the speed at which we can do these things. And they've in recent years launched a CBDC. They've launched a payment token regulation. Of course, they're enabling banks like us to service crypto businesses, VASP, virtual asset service providers, for banking, core banking services, which we're using it as an ecosystem play to service that part of the ecosystem as well. But what does that mean? That means that you can create that connectedness, and that's important. If an institution, you asked about SMEs, if SMEs and institutions want to move money around, what's the best way of moving money around? Right now, it's quite costly. It takes time, of course, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this technology can make it seamless at speed. They call it atomic settlement in our world, which basically means real time, and at much, much lower costs. So there's a lot of opportunity here for the SME and institutional space. But we obviously want to be at the forefront of that. I mean, people have, since we launched a retail platform, institutions have called me to said, can you service us for this type of flow? So the interest exists, for sure. It's a question of we don't want to put anything substandard in the market. As I said earlier, quality and over speed. But once we do go live, it's all about making sure that speed is there for the customer.
No, it's clearly a very exciting space to be in. Okay, number one. What was the first crypto that you bought?
Sure. I was in banking before I joined the crypto space. 2014, XRP was the first thing I bought and got into.
Mine's way more vanilla than that. Bitcoin's the first, but that's because I have a long-term strategy. I really believe long-term Bitcoin is digital gold, and because I think that, my objective is to have two boys, and I want to have one Bitcoin for each of them, because if you believe what you read and if you really get into the depths of this, but actually there's some data behind this. There's some really, really solid data behind this as to why it might go there. Probably don't have time to do this. It's not quite a quick fire answer, but if I went there, then it definitely wouldn't be. But I think that, with a long-term view, is why I got into Bitcoin first.
It's funny you say that. I have two boys as well, and I'm doing exactly the same thing. Question number 2. What is the biggest myth about cryptocurrency today?
I have a fun one for this one. You always read in the papers that crypto is such a scam. There's only for the fraudsters. And an interesting study that once went out, which I think Binance actually put out the study, but nonetheless, it was that you could take a bag full of cash out of your bank, cross borders, and that is more untraceable than crypto. And people ask, well, how? That doesn't make any sense, right? And it's because the whole point of the blockchain and the DLT technology is for traceability, right? Mm-hmm. You can actually see, maybe you don't know who's behind that wallet, but you can see every single transaction that happens on the blockchain. Now, at times you don't know who's behind that. That's anonymity. That's a different point. But that's the biggest myth, is there's actually less fraud in crypto than there is in your standard fiat, right? But
I'll double click on that, because there is less fraud, but it maybe looks like there's more, because you have the transparency and you have the traceability. And what's interesting, and I love to give this example, if I turned up to the Bank of England or the equivalent today and I said, we should introduce cash notes, they'd laugh me out the building, because it's not traceable. It's not transparent. Yet it's convention, and it's been here for however long, hundreds of years. Whereas because crypto and because the whole digital asset world is relatively new, you're scared of what you don't know. And that's unfortunately the biggest myth with reference to what Nadeem was saying. The sooner people understand that actually this is a more transparent, this is a more clean way of managing funds. As a final point, all the agencies in the US use this. There's plenty of platforms out there. I'm talking about agencies such as the FBI and the CIA and the government, and they can all trace it. You can't say the same thing about cash.
Amazing. Question number 3. What's your favorite crypto podcast? And you're not allowed to say this one.
Well, I didn't realize you turned into a crypto podcast, first
Maybe
of all.
it
But
depends on the reception.
congratulations.
Depends on the reception to this episode. Yeah.
There, wow.
Yeah, in which case I'll be back every week. So I like a few, and I suspect they're not that surprising. I do like Bankless. I like Castle Island Ventures. I also like Unchained. The thing is I do tend to go to the same ones over and over again because they have progressive conversations. They don't just have point in time conversation, which of course happens with podcasts. That's the nature of podcasts. But because they are they're pulling on the same thread continuously, it gives you different perspectives, and they bring such interesting guests on these podcasts. So I actually use it as a learning tool. But the thing I use it for most is to understand what the rest of the market is doing, and then to create stitchings of what I think I should be doing as a business as a result. Because connecting those two dots is way more difficult than you could probably imagine. However, translating that into execution is even more difficult. And that's where the strategy for the digital asset business is sort of incepted from. But it's not just that, obviously, but there's a lot of great media out there that can help with this.
And Nadeem?
Yeah, Unchained, definitely. I like the former Forbes editor, Laura Shin, that one. It's a no hype podcast weekly. It's great. It's always brings in such great topics when it comes to tokenomics and regulatory and complex issues around crypto. I think that's a great one for those that want to learn it. And the other one that I do listen to is Anthony Pompliano's The Pomp podcast. He's obviously a very well-known entrepreneur. That one's good because it helps introduce crypto, traditional finance, and entrepreneurship, which is a nicer spin and a different blend to your very crypto native folks. It's also one, but all the ones that Dishang mentioned are definitely top of my list.
There is one more actually, and that's the All In podcast. I don't know if you know this one, but the All In podcast is the biggest podcast, has the most followers in the world. That's a more holistic podcast, which covers crypto and other sort of monetary factors, which I would highly recommend as well.
It's amazing. It's moving so quickly. You almost feel like you need a daily podcast to keep up with it.
You absolutely do. I mean, I listen to podcasts at least twice a day. Certainly during the week, sometimes.
Obviously not in work time.
No. Normally when I'm driving, actually. Normally when I'm driving.
Last one, feature you're most proud of in the app.
That's an interesting one. There's a few I'm proud of, but I'll tell you, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. It's simplicity. For the same reason I don't want to harp on about the nature of creating something simpler than it could be. I think, if you create simple, people understand it, people can relate. And it's not a feature per se, but it means that people will really not feel overawed by it. You go to a Binance, you go to a OKX, you go to a Crypto.com, they're great platforms, but they're built for experts. The graphing, the features, the functionality, there's so much information to consume. What we've done is distilled all of that and said, you know what, you can consume this in a very basic but complementary way in terms of enhancing your portfolio.
Nadeem?
I couldn't agree more, actually. The user friendliness of that app is just fantastic, right? Even for someone who's been in the crypto space for some time, some of these apps these days are just overloaded with things, right? It's like features. Where do I click? How do I do this? And I think the user friendliness and the simplicity of the app that just gives people what they need is fantastic. And the depth of information, right? You can still see charts. You can still get information about the different tokens that are currently available right on the app. And the other feature very specifically is swaps, right? Again, goes back to the friction of buying and selling and having to switch different. If you want to go from Bitcoin to Ethereum, you can do that. It's nice and simple, right? And I like that. I mean, again, as someone who likes to kind of move around money in his crypto portfolio, I think that's a feature that people don't really focus so much on, which I think is just a big usage of it.
The great thing about the swap feature is that you're actually not moving money. You're just moving token on a blockchain, which means that there's no fiat impact to your actual account. And essentially, if you decide one day to Nadeem's example, I want to move Bitcoin to Ethereum, I simply say, okay, how much Bitcoin do I want to move? And it automatically converts it to the equivalent Ethereum, and it just repatriates your portfolio. So it's instantaneous. And that's very powerful, I agree.
Yeah, these are amazing features. And finally, question 5. What is your prediction for the UAE crypto market?
Good one. I mean, I would say just let's continue on from what you see today, right? More and more international companies wanting to set up shop here because it's such a prominent and strong place to set up in the UAE, but in MENA more generally. I'm talking about big international brands, right? Obviously, we're one of the first, I think the first European brand to come in here, but you're beginning to see Asian brands, you're beginning to see American brands come in, right? So I think that's one big one. And then two, sort of what we kind of talked a bit about in the podcast earlier on, continuation of other use cases, right? And I think you're going to see the UAE want to be a test bed for these, whether it's tokenization of assets or other use cases that we have yet to really think through. I'm pretty excited about all that happening first in the UAE.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there's three words, and I'll go into those a bit more, and that's growth, growth, growth. I think that's what's going to happen. But,
Easy to remember.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Iteration is always great. So, yes, we're the first conventional bank. I don't think we'll be the last. And I welcome other conventional banks, not because they're competition, because I think the market needs it. I definitely talk about crypto brokerage akin to offering equities brokerage, which every bank does. I think it's something every customer should have access to, right? But what I would say is that I think, just to talk about what Nadeem touched on, a couple of things. Number one, more international companies coming. Of course, we see that, we feel that's going to happen, and we are already offering core banking services to these FASPs, and we plan to sort of double down on that and grow that business as well. But also the different asset classes, the different types of digital assets that are coming. I think if you consider how much has happened in a short period of time and how much could happen in the future, I think the times are very, very exciting for the industry, for the country, and for the banking sector in general, and certainly for RAKBANK.
No, I agree. Extremely exciting times ahead. Dishang, Nadeem, that brings us to a close. It's been really great fun having you here. Congratulations on the launch. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for having us, yeah.